What if I told you that there are 5 habits that will allow you to live an extra 13 years of life? Would you believe me? Because it's true. In this episode, I'll share with you those top 5 habits to not only live an extra 13 years, but to live them well. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Dr. Sinan, the GP, source on all things health related for you and your family. Let's get to it. Habit number 1 is a healthy diet. Hands up if you thought I was going to say this. Yeah, this old chestnut just never goes away. What you eat and drink massively affects your short and long-term health. It is quite literally the fuel of your brain and body, and we need to be mindful about what we consume. Easier said than done though. The dietary and nutrition world is chock full of contradictions, tribalism, and downright confusion, right? Well, yes, but actually there is a surprising amount of agreement, even between opposing schools of dietary thought. What I'm saying is that almost all dietary philosophies agree on much more than they disagree on. Focusing on those commonalities or points of agreement, and you'll be following a diet that follows most of the dietary evidence base. There are 2 ways that I approach this with my patients. First, things to avoid. We're much more likely to get bigger bang for our dietary buck by removing some of the worst food offenders than by adding in something good. And since you asked, the worst offenders are sugar, industrial oils, and refined, highly processed foods. I'm making this sound really straightforward, but unless you have a working knowledge of nutrition, you may struggle. For example, I just said avoid sugar, but there are literally 50 plus different names for sugar used by the industry to sneak it into our foods. After we've avoided certain foods, we need to think about what we need to add in. Focus on loading your plate with plants and plant-based proteins, whole grains, healthy fats like olive oil and fruit oil, and prioritize fish a few times a week. Some things are hotly debated, and it seems like they always have been. Starchy carbs such as pasta and potatoes, meat, eggs, even dairy. I have strong opinions on all of these, but some nuance is needed depending on the actual age, physical state, goals and preferences of the individual before I would strongly recommend or recommend to avoid. If you're avoiding all of the foods that I mentioned to avoid, then everything else is generally fair game. My patients often find it easier to stick with mantras rather than learning loads about different foods and counting calories. So some of the best and most memorable are: eat the rainbow, i.e. eat various coloured foods. Think summer salad, not Skittles or jelly beans. Replace everything white or beige on your plate with aforementioned healthy rainbow. Eat until you're full, assuming you're having foods from the good list. Don't restrict, because that often results in us rebounding in the way we eat and often eating the wrong things. Never go food shopping when you're hungry. We almost always end up buying things we wish we hadn't. And avoid food that is trying to convince you that it's healthy. It's probably not. You never see a broccoli trying to convince you that it's good for you. But all those cereals and margarines and low-fat yogurts with their health claims, probably give them a miss. There are caveats here. We are all different and we have different responses to food. Carbohydrate tolerance, metabolic state, disease state are all important factors where nutritional nuance is needed. I will be doing a deeper dive on food in the near future because it's just so complicated. We can simplify nutrition to a certain degree, but not the whole hog. Having said all this, without doubt, one of the best things you can do for you and your family's health is to have a way of eating that works for you, hits all the right health notes, and is affordable, culturally sound, enjoyable, and sustainable. Most importantly though, a way of eating that when you fall off the wagon, such as a holiday or downing a tub of ice cream or 3 takeouts on the trot, the leap to jump back on to your dietary way of eating or your food approach is not so big that it takes weeks rather than days to get back on track. Habit number 2 is regular exercise. Last year I did the couch to 5K after not running for about 2 decades. For those that don't know what that is, it's a free app that helps you consistently do a small amount of running each week for a few months. It was one of the highlights of the year. In 2 months, I went from getting tired from walking about 200 yards to doing about 5 kilometers consistently. I'm still terrible at running, but I actually enjoy it now. Not so much the running per se, but the knock-on effects in my whole life. When I started the Couch to 5K, I felt good. My diet, my energy, my sleep, my fitness, my mood, everything seemed to improve within days and stayed improved. What I love about exercise is that the benefit isn't linear. What I mean is that if you do 5 hours of exercise a week, you aren't twice as healthy as someone that does 2.5 hours. No, the health benefit of exercise keeps increasing and increasing until about 2 hours and then slowly levels off. And then actually, once you're doing loads of exercise per week, the health benefits start to go down. Too much exercise is also not great for you. But you can get to that sweet spot of maximal whole mind and body returns at a very reasonable number. So how much is optimal? What's the magic number? In the UK, this is about 30 minutes 5 times a week, which I still think is actually quite a lot. But the definition of exercise is very loose and broad. You basically need to just get your breathing going and get yourself sweating a bit. And it's not just walking or running or rowing or swimming either. You should definitely do 2 sessions of resistance training. This is super important for maintaining muscle mass and strength. This probably doesn't seem too important when you're 20 years old, but when you're 70, it's the difference between being active and mobile and often being bedbound. If you want to get super productive with your exercise, some of the most beneficial exercises are those with a social element, such as tennis or football, whatever works for you, but getting your sweat on and having a laugh with friends, there is literally no drug in the world that's this powerful. Again, I personally shy away from giving more specific recommendations for exercise unless I know more about an individual's personal goals. If you're training for a marathon, my advice would be very different compared to someone who's just trying to get the strength to be able to pick up their grandkids. FYI, a goal is important. If you don't have one, do it for 80-year-old you, being able to do all the things that the physically well 30-year-old you can do. Exercise is a bit like diet. It's personal. We all respond differently to different food and different exercises, and we almost universally know that they're important, but most of us don't prioritize them. Just like food, we need a strategy, or at the very least some rules of thumb that works for you. So if you fall off the wagon, and you will, you can quickly get back up again. That's why I like the Couch to 5K. Even if I don't run for a few weeks, I know I can start back at 1K and build my way back up again. Habit number 3 is maintaining a healthy body weight. 2 out of 3 people in this country are overweight or obese. That means in a normal day, where I see about 30 adult patients in clinic, 20 people are pathologically overweight. They have the disease of excess fat storage. You may be thinking, well, if we get the diet right and the exercise right, then you'll be fine. And yes, those are pretty important factors in maintaining a healthy body weight, but it's really not that simple. Look at this infographic. These are all the factors that affect weight. There are huge, complex societal, cultural, and financial issues that affect all of the above, including weight. I'm showing you this just to give you an idea of the nuance and complexity of obesity. People aren't overweight because they're slothful or don't have willpower or are too lazy to exercise. No, there are literally hundreds of other explanations, including physiological and genetic, that can explain it. Some of these we can address, and some we can't as individuals. We've already talked about some of the biggies, diet and activity, so we're halfway there already. Here's a question: what is a normal weight anyway? That's basically the BMI, the body mass index, a score based on your height and weight. Depending on your score, your weight category will be broken down into these scores on the table. It's not a perfect metric by any stretch, but if you're not a professional athlete, then it usually hints at something useful about how weight affects our health. This is why we need a strategy for diet and exercise. These are the things that we have most control over. If we don't have a strategy, an unhealthy body weight usually follows, and illness almost always follows this. Habit 4, avoid too much alcohol. If I asked you what diseases are caused by too much alcohol, how many could you come up with? 2, 3, 5 maybe. Actually, alcohol is directly implicated, i.e. a causal factor in over 60 different medical conditions, including throat, stomach, breast, and liver cancer. One of the most shocking things as a doctor is seeing the devastation caused by excess alcohol, and not just from a purely medical point of view. Relationships destroyed, criminality, depression, many lives ruined. Alcohol is basically liquid calories that bypasses the normal way that food and fluid are usually processed in the body. Alcohol instead goes straight to the liver, where it's broken down to produce poisonous byproducts that literally brown and damage your internal organs, especially the liver. Excess alcohol consumption is endemic, normalized, even encouraged to some degree. Just like weight, the push and pull factors of consuming excess alcohol are rooted in our peers, our communities, and our laws. In some circumstances, it's so easy to fall into, almost impossible to get out of. I've noticed the public health advice around alcohol consumption slowly change from the promotion of wine due to some potential health benefits to a much more nuanced and cautious stance on alcohol due to the net risks to the population, addiction, cancer, traffic accidents, criminality, far outstripping any potential benefits. Habit number 5, and the final one, is don't smoke. This is to avoid smoke if you don't smoke and stop smoking if you do. I remember my first job as a doctor on a respiratory ward. We had 25 patients. 24 of them on my first day had lung cancer secondary to smoking. If diet and exercise are done right, they have literally miraculous effects on your body and lifespan. Smoking is basically the diametric opposite. It wreaks pure and utter havoc. You've probably heard the stats too. They're worth repeating even if you have, as they make for pretty grim listening. Each cigarette decreases life expectancy by about 11 minutes, slightly longer than it takes to actually smoke one. Each cigarette contains a mind-boggling 7,000 chemicals, 250 of which are harmful and about 69 directly cancer-causing. A surprisingly small amount of people stop smoking due to horrible stats and figures like the ones I just mentioned. Almost everyone stops because they've had a scare, they get ill, or someone they know gets ill, or they've just had kids. Like alcohol, it's unbelievably addictive at almost every level: behavioral, physical, and psychological. It becomes your master very quickly. Most of the UK population will die due to one of 5 diseases: ischemic heart disease, stroke, dementia, cancer, or lung disease. Smoking is literally a leading cause in every single one of those diseases, period. The best thing you can do for your health at any time, ever, if you're a smoker, is to stop. And the best part is, even after years of smoking, you can still make dramatic health improvements in literally days or weeks. Even to this day, when I take a history from a patient and they say that they're a smoker, I almost always do a double take, and I almost always assume the worst. The good news is that smoking cases are decreasing. We're seeing a generation now where they don't smoke like their parents or grandparents. But now there are different addictions to battle: social media, online gambling, pornography. Oh, and if you're wondering about vaping, it kind of depends on what your starting point is. If you're a smoker and you're looking for a replacement, then it's a safer nicotine replacement option. But if you're vaping just for the hell of it, then no, it's not without its harms, and it seems to be just as addictive, if not more so. So that's it. The 5 top things found in a massive study in the US that can improve your life expectancy by about 13 years. And in case you're wondering, similar findings have been found all around the world in different studies. In the UK, they found a 14-year increase in life expectancy, 15 years in Germany, and a whopping 17 years in Canada. If you follow the 5 habits, adding 13 years to your life is probably at the conservative end of the spectrum. If you found today's topic useful, don't forget to share with your friends and family and click the subscribe button to stay in the loop. You can find out more at drsinanthegp.com. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions for future topics, I would love to hear from you. So do message in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Till next time, stay healthy.